Welcome to a space where faith meets real life and growth gets uncomfortable. This isn't surface level motivation. It's truth that stretches you, challenges you, and asks you to show up differently. If you're ready to stop avoiding the work and start becoming who God's been calling you to be, stay.
Emily, lean in for a moment. I don't know what you've been carrying. I don't know what tried to break you this year, but I came to tell you something with my whole chest. This last month is not going to look like the rest of your year. God is about to step into your story in a way that won't make sense to the enemy, won't make sense to the people who counted you out, and won't even make sense to the version of you that almost gave up. You're walking into a month of strange miracles. Miracles that interrupt patterns, miracles that rewrite history, miracles that show up where you thought the ground was dry and empty. I feel it so heavy in my spirit. God saved the unusual, the unexpected, the supernatural for last. So get your faith up, get your posture right, because heaven is about to surprise you. When you step into a season that carries divine intention, there's a shift that happens long before you see anything change in the natural. Stepping boldly into the miracles God has reserved for your last stretch means recognizing that miracles don't wait to be convenient. They don't wait for you to feel fully ready. And they don't wait for your circumstances to be perfect. They arrive in the middle of things, messy things, unfinished things, painful things, and they demand that you rise with an authority you didn't know you had. When God positions you for a miracle, He didn't ask if you're comfortable. He asks if you're available. He asks if you can trust Him beyond what you see, beyond what you understand, and beyond what you've already survived, because the miracle you're stepping into isn't designed to match your comfort. It's designed to match your call. It's designed to reveal a strength in you that the journey has been secretly building all along. There are moments in life when God holds something for the final chapter, not because He's late, but because He's strategic. He waits until your character has caught up with your purpose. He waits until your faith can hold the weight of what you're about to receive. He waits until your wounds have closed enough that the blessing won't leak through the broken places. The last stretch of anything, whether it's a year, a season, a journey, or a transformation, always carries a certain spiritual pressure. That pressure can make you feel like giving up, like you're too tired to believe again, like you've already tried too many times. But that pressure is also a sign that something is forming, something is stretching, something is preparing to break forth. The last stretch is where God often hides His biggest miracles, because it's the place where your faith is the most purified, the most honest, the most surrendered. Stepping boldly into this miracle season means you have to release the timelines you built in your mind. You have to let go of the frustration that came from watching months pass without the breakthrough you were praying for. You have to surrender the disappointment of delayed answers, closed doors, and silent seasons, because sometimes God waits until the last month to show you He never forgot you. Not even for a moment. He waits until the last month to prove that His timing doesn't operate according to your calendar. He waits until the last month to reveal a blessing that carries the weight of everything you endured. You may not understand why it took so long, but you will see why it had to be this moment. You will see why God saved the miracle for now instead of then. Stepping boldly means refusing to shrink under the pressure of the unknown. It means waking up with an expectation that God is moving even when nothing looks different. It means showing up with a posture of faith when the evidence around you seems to contradict the promise. Boldness is not loudness, it's alignment. It's stepping where God tells you to step even when your knees are shaking. It's declaring that God is able even when your circumstances are screaming otherwise. It's choosing to see possibility where others see impossibility. Boldness in this season may look like making a decision you've been too afraid to make. It may look like releasing something you were never meant to carry. It may look like returning to a dream you buried after disappointment. It may look like forgiving someone who hurt you deeply so that your heart can be clear enough to receive what's coming. Whatever boldness requires of you, it will stretch you. It will challenge the version of you that learned how to survive, but never learned how to expect abundance. Bold steps are rarely comfortable steps. They're the kind of steps that make you question if you heard God clearly. They're the kind of steps that force you to confront the fear you've been managing quietly. They're the kind of steps that reveal whether you're living by faith or by familiarity. But every bold step places you closer to what God has set aside for you. Every bold step aligns you with resources you didn't know were waiting. Every bold step breaks the patterns that kept you small. And every bold step carries heaven's approval, even if earth's approval is missing. Miracles are attracted to movement. They meet you at the point of obedience, not hesitation. This last stretch requires you to understand that your miracle doesn't depend on your perfection. It depends on your posture. God isn't looking for flawless faith. He's looking for willing faith. He's looking for faith that shows up even when it's trembling. Faith that says, God, I don't know how, but I trust you anyway. Faith that says, I've never seen you do it like this, but I believe you can. Faith that says, this year may have drained me, but it didn't destroy me, and I still have enough strength to stand in expectation. That kind of faith invites God to move. That kind of faith unlocks heaven's response. That kind of faith positions you for strange miracles. Miracles that don't follow logic, miracles that interrupt cycles, miracles that transform entire areas of your life at once. There are miracles that come gently, quietly, subtly. But what you're stepping into now is not that. This is the kind of miracle that shifts atmospheres, the kind that announces itself, the kind that breaks generational barriers, the kind that restores what was lost and replaces what was damaged, the kind that shows you God was orchestrating every detail, even when you thought nothing was happening. The kind that makes you look back and realize that the waiting wasn't wasted, the tears weren't wasted, the battles weren't wasted. Everything was leading you here. Everything was grooming you for this moment. This miracle won't require you to chase it. It will meet you while you're walking in alignment. It will meet you while you're being faithful. It will meet you while you're tending to the things God already placed in your hands. It will meet you while you're choosing hope over despair. Miracles have a way of locating people who are positioned with expectation, not desperation. Expectation says, I believe something is coming and I'm preparing my life for it. Expectation says, I may not know what God is doing, but I trust his nature enough to stay ready. Expectation says, my faith is standing at the door waiting for what heaven is about to deliver. You don't need to understand the miracle to walk into it. You only need to understand the one who promised it. And if he said this last month will carry strange miracles, then every day of it is pregnant with possibility. Every hour of it is a chance for God to reveal something unexpected. Every moment of it carries divine potential. You might wake up to a miracle that shifts your finances. You might receive a phone call that changes your direction. You might encounter an opportunity that lifts you into a new season. You might receive a healing that doctors can't explain. You might discover strength you thought you'd lost. The miracle is not limited to one area. It can break out wherever God decides to breathe. Step boldly, because what's coming requires a version of you that refuses to be timid. Step boldly, because heaven has already written your breakthrough into this season. Step boldly, because God didn't bring you this far to end your year in defeat. Step boldly, because what he has for you in this last stretch is carrying the power to shift everything moving forward. When God starts releasing blessings that don't look familiar, it requires a level of spiritual awareness that goes beyond what your eyes can see and what your logic can process. Sometimes the blessings he sends don't match the picture you had in your mind. And if you're not careful, you'll walk right past an answered prayer because it didn't arrive wearing the outfit you expected. Preparing your faith to recognize unfamiliar blessings means training yourself to see beyond the obvious, to feel beyond the surface, and to trust that God can move in ways that disrupt your understanding. It means growing comfortable with the fact that divine provision is often wrapped in inconvenience, discomfort, or challenge. It may come disguised as change, opportunity, correction, redirection, or even loss. Not every blessing looks like a blessing at first glance, and not every miracle reveals itself immediately. Some miracles unfold slowly, quietly, and in ways that can be misunderstood if your faith isn't prepared to perceive them. Faith that recognizes unfamiliar blessings is faith that has matured past the need for constant confirmation. It's faith that doesn't panic the moment something shifts. It's faith that understands God often moves in patterns that don't match your expectations. You prayed for strength, and he sent situations that pulled strength out of you. You prayed for direction, and he closed doors that weren't meant for your future. You prayed for peace, and he removed people who were secretly draining you. You prayed for growth, and he stretched you in ways that made you uncomfortable. You prayed for provision, and he gave you an idea instead of a deposit. Blessings are not always wrapped in beauty. Sometimes they're wrapped in disruption. But the disruption is the doorway. It creates the space where God can plant what was reserved for your next season. To prepare your faith, you must first prepare your perception. Perception is the lens through which you interpret what's happening around you. If that lens is clouded by disappointment, fear, or anxiety, you'll misinterpret God's movements. Preparing your faith means cleaning the lens. It means telling yourself that just because something feels unfamiliar doesn't mean it isn't from God. It means reminding yourself that God's ways are higher, his thoughts are deeper, and his strategies are beyond human logic. You have to make peace with the fact that he doesn't move according to your timeline, your preference, or your predicted path. He moves according to destiny. And destiny doesn't ask permission to interrupt your plans. It simply arrives. It simply unfolds. It simply manifests in the moments where you least expect it. When you're entering a month of strange miracles, you can't rely on the patterns that define the rest of your year. Strange miracles don't follow familiar rhythms. They don't follow predictable routes. They don't follow ordinary formulas. They show up in ways that make you stop and question if this could really be God. If this could really be the thing you prayed for, if this could really be the shift you've been sensing in your spirit. And that's why your faith has to be prepared. Because if your faith isn't anchored, unfamiliar blessings will look like threats instead of opportunities. They will look like burdens instead of breakthroughs. They will look like confusion instead of clarity. You'll find yourself resisting what you were meant to receive because it doesn't look like what you imagined. Preparing your faith means giving God permission to surprise you. It means releasing the rigid expectations of what you think your miracle should look like. It means opening your heart to the possibility that the very thing you've been waiting for could come through a person you didn't expect, a route you didn't anticipate, or a moment you didn't see coming. God can use anything and anyone to bless you. He's not bound by your preferences. He's not limited by your history. He's not restricted by your surroundings. He will use a stranger, a setback, a sudden transition, or an unexpected encounter to deliver something that shifts your life. But if your faith is small, if your perspective is narrow, if your heart is closed, you will walk right past what heaven placed in your path. Faith that recognizes unfamiliar blessings is faith that listens more than it reacts. It's faith that pauses before it panics. It's faith that looks beyond what is visible and asks God, is there something you're doing here that I can't see yet? It's faith that leans into discernment instead of fear. Discernment is essential when God is releasing strange miracles because discernment allows you to sense his hand in places where his fingerprints aren't immediately obvious. It allows you to recognize that a delay may be protection, a closed door may be direction. A sudden ending may be preparation. A new opportunity may be divine acceleration. Discernment opens your spiritual eyes so you can interpret the unfamiliar correctly. God often hides blessings in uncomfortable places because growth and elevation require stretching. Sometimes he allows circumstances to shift, not to punish you, but to position you. He may remove comfort so you will move. He may disrupt your routine so you will pay attention. He may shake your environment so you will awaken to the next level of who you are meant to be. And if your faith isn't ready, you'll misread his movement as abandonment when it's actually advancement. You'll misread his silence as distance when it's actually preparation. You'll misread his redirection as rejection when it's actually protection. Preparing your faith means recalibrating your interpretation so you can recognize God's intentions even when they are unfamiliar. Unfamiliar blessings often come through unfamiliar instructions. God may ask you to do something you've never done before. He may ask you to speak where you used to stay silent. He may ask you to rest where you used to push. He may ask you to walk away from something you thought you needed. He may ask you to trust him in an area where you've been wounded before. He may ask you to forgive someone who hurt you deeply. He may ask you to try again in a place where you failed. These instructions don't always feel logical, but they are purposeful. Obedience is the bridge between unfamiliar blessings and manifested miracles. If you only obey when it makes sense, you miss the blessings that are hidden in the supernatural. Preparing your faith means preparing your mindset. You cannot enter a month of strange miracles with a mindset shaped by old disappointments. You cannot carry the weight of past seasons into a new one. You cannot approach divine surprises with human fear. A renewed mindset tells you that God is not limited to what he has done before. It tells you that just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't happen at all. It tells you that God's delays are not denials. It tells you that God is working even in silence. A renewed mindset creates space for God to move in ways that exceed your expectations and transform your direction. Faith that can recognize unfamiliar blessings is faith that has learned how to release control, release fear, release assumptions, release timelines, release wounds, release narratives that no longer fit who you are becoming. Release the belief that blessings must be comfortable to be from God. Release the idea that miracles must look familiar to be real. Release the fear that you won't recognize what God is trying to deliver. When you release, you create space. When you create space, you receive. When you receive, you expand. When God is preparing to release strange miracles, he begins by shifting your inner world. He stretches your capacity to believe for what you've never seen. He enlarges your ability to receive what doesn't match your past. He strengthens your spiritual sensitivity so you don't overlook what he's doing. He refines your discernment so you don't confuse his blessings with distractions or his opportunities with burden. Everything he does internally is designed to prepare you for what he is sending externally. There will be moments this month when something shows up and your first instinct may be to question it. Instead of reacting, pause. Instead of assuming, lean in. Instead of dismissing it, ask God if this could be part of the strange miracle he promised you. Not every unfamiliar thing is a blessing, but many blessings come wrapped in unfamiliarity. And when your faith is prepared, you won't be intimidated by what's new. You won't run from what looks different. You won't reject what feels unusual. You'll sense the hand of God even when his methods surprise you. You'll recognize his voice even when it speaks through unexpected channels. You'll feel his presence even when the path ahead feels uncertain. Your faith is the filter that determines what you catch and what you miss. When your faith is prepared, you won't miss a thing God sends. You won't overlook divine connections. You won't underestimate new opportunities. You won't resist unexpected answers. You will walk into this last month with your spirit sharpened, your heart open, your mind renewed, and your eyes trained to see miracles in places others overlook. Because when God releases strange miracles, he releases them to those who are ready to perceive them, even when they come in unfamiliar form. When God is preparing to release strange miracles, he doesn't just position your circumstances, he positions your spirit. Alignment is the posture that allows you to recognize divine interruptions instead of resisting them. When your spirit is aligned, you become sensitive to shifts you can't explain, nudges you can't ignore, and opportunities that seem to appear out of nowhere. Alignment is what keeps you from missing what God is doing, simply because it arrives suddenly, unexpectedly, or in a form you've never seen before. Divine interruptions rarely introduce themselves politely. They break patterns, disrupt routines, and challenge your sense of stability. But alignment prepares you to embrace the interruption instead of fighting it. It helps you understand that when heaven steps into your timeline, it does so with purpose, precision, and intention. Alignment begins internally long before anything shifts externally. It requires you to bring your thoughts, emotions, expectations, and decisions into agreement with what God is speaking in this season. The reason some people miss divine interruptions is not because God didn't speak, but because their spirit wasn't quiet or clear enough to hear. When your mind is crowded, when your heart is heavy, when your emotions are restless, it becomes harder to discern God's voice from the noise. Alignment asks you to create space within yourself to hear again. It asks you to release the distractions, the anxieties, the assumptions, and the narratives that are competing for your attention. It asks you to quiet the fears that tell you you're not ready and silence the doubts that whisper you might miss it. Because God is not hiding his miracles, but he will not force them into a heart that is full of clutter. Divine interruptions often appear as shifts that don't match your plans. They can come as a sudden change in direction, a surprising opportunity, an unexpected conversation, or a moment that feels almost out of place. If your spirit is not aligned, you'll call it coincidence or chaos. But when your spirit is aligned, you'll sense the presence of God moving behind the scenes. Alignment teaches you to pay attention to small signals, gentle impressions, spiritual instincts, and moments that carry weight, even if they seem ordinary. It teaches you to treat the unexpected as potentially divine. It trains you to ask God, is this you positioning me for something I can't see yet, instead of assuming the interruption is a threat or an inconvenience. Alignment redefines how you interpret the unexpected. Alignment also requires surrender. Surrender is not weakness. Surrender is recognition. It is recognizing that God sees the path ahead more clearly than you. It is acknowledging that his strategy often surpasses your logic. It is accepting that divine interruptions may pull you away from what is predictable, but always push you toward what is purposeful. When you surrender your timeline, you create space for God to rearrange your steps. When you surrender the need to control every detail, you become available to receive direction you couldn't have discovered on your own. Surrender doesn't mean you stop moving. It means you stop resisting. It means your pace becomes guided instead of self-driven. It means your decisions become faith-led instead of fear-based. When you live from a posture of surrender, you are able to move when God says move, pause when God says pause, speak when he prompts, and let go when he releases. Alignment often requires a pruning process. Pruning is not punishment, it is preparation. Sometimes God has to remove what doesn't belong so that you can recognize what does. Sometimes he clears relationships that were draining you, mindsets that were blocking you, habits that were hindering you, or opportunities that were too small for where you're going. When your spirit is aligned, you won't mourn every removal or resist every shift. You'll understand that pruning creates room for what is coming. You'll realize that divine interruptions sometimes begin with divine subtraction. You'll learn that losing what wasn't meant for your destiny is actually gaining what is. Alignment allows you to interpret endings correctly so you don't cling to what God is trying to replace. To stay aligned, you must learn to live with spiritual sensitivity. Sensitivity doesn't mean fragility, it means awareness. It means feeling the tug of the Holy Spirit even in the noise of life. It means recognizing when something is off in your spirit and taking time to recalibrate. It means noticing when God is nudging you to pay attention, slow down, shift directions, or prepare for something unexpected. Sensitivity allows you to catch the subtle cues that signal a divine interruption is approaching. It trains you to listen for God, not just in the loud moments, but also in the quiet ones. It teaches you to trust your spirit even when your mind doesn't have all the details. Sensitivity is a spiritual antenna that picks up heavenly signals before they manifest in the natural. Alignment also reshapes your expectations. When you expect God to move, you become more aware of how He might move. Expectation opens your heart to divine surprises. It keeps you from falling into spiritual complacency. It positions you to wake up each day knowing heaven could interrupt your normal at any moment. Expectation keeps your spirit awake. It keeps your faith active. It keeps your heart hopeful. When you walk in expectation, you stop assuming that the next day will be like the last. You stop assuming that what failed before will fail again. You stop assuming that God is finished moving. Expectation says, God, I am ready to receive whatever you want to send, however you choose to send it. That posture attracts divine interruptions because it creates room for them. Alignment also involves obedience. Obedience is what transforms divine instruction into divine manifestation. God can send the interruption, but if you're unwilling to respond, you delay or even forfeit what was meant for you. Obedience doesn't always feel comfortable. It often requires moving before you have clarity, saying yes before you have details, stepping out before you feel qualified. But obedience is the proof that your alignment is real. It is the demonstration that your trust in God outweighs your need for certainty. When you obey quickly, miracles find you quickly. When you obey consistently, blessings flow consistently. When you obey even when it feels unfamiliar, God releases miracles that exceed anything you could have imagined. Divine interruptions often test your flexibility. They challenge your routines, your assumptions, your comfort zone.